What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Crunch Time here on this Saturday afternoon or evening. I am Britt Devine. We are here with the trifecta in the booth today of myself, Mr. Justin Van Zuden, STL Cards 84, and TJ. I'm calling him the Chris Dunn Whisperer. We're going to see if we can repeat last weekend's show of a nice Chris Dunn call. TJ, I'll start with you. What's going on, dude?
Not a lot. Ready to talk some NBA. It's crazy. We didn't have much news today, and like a couple of Q tags we had ended up in with Jimmy Butler, and so I ended up kind of making my like quote unquote dummy set of lineups like a couple hours ago. Not dummy, but just like assuming they were gonna change and update throughout the day, and they're really not gonna.
There's still time, TJ. There's still time, and there is a game between Houston and San Antonio, so never underestimate the amount of shenanigans that might happen in that game. Justin, aka the Taxman, aka STL Cards 84. What's going on, man?
Yeah, only 6 weeks to go, not counting or anything, but 6 weeks away from tax deadline, and that means we're only about 4 weeks away from baseball, so that makes me a little excited, especially after, we had the All-Star break for NBA, and then Noto covered for me last Saturday on the article, and so I only written like one article on the weekends the last 3 weeks, and then, I'm getting back into it today, and got, this kind of doozy of a slate to write about today, which really nothing happened. Like, that never happens in the NBA in March. It's always, teams going all over the place with news. And I know there's only 5 games, but really nothing has broken throughout the day, right? Keldon Johnson was doubtful coming in, and he's out. And then Butler got a questionable tag, but he's going to play. So, yeah, just not a whole lot happening today. And it's, I don't know, kind of a dry slate, if you want to say that. But everybody's dealing with the same salary cap, the same set of rules. So just a matter of finding those diamonds in the rough today. But it's a fairly ugly slate. Like, you got one good game, and you got some bad teams, and you got some bad teams facing each other, and it's just kind of yucky tonight.
Justin, you are the college football expert here. The underwear Olympics were today. I'm not sure if you were aware of the NFL Combine. Anthony Richardson or any other quarterback? Who you got?
No, I got none of them. I don't. I think Richardson has the potential to be really good in the NFL, and it's interesting because he didn't really do a whole lot in college. The system was kind of wacky for him, and the team was all over the place. But the talent is certainly there. But it just seems it's going to be another year where I think a lot of these quarterbacks get overdrafted. So we'll see. But Richardson would seem to be the guy that's got the biggest upside.
Next year, a couple of good quarterbacks in that class. Well, we should see what happens in 24. But we'll digress from the underwear Olympics of the NFL Combine.
I was really trying to struggle right away with what you meant by that until you
there's not too much. It's certainly not us in our underwear on the show. No one would want to see that, but the NFL Combine people will tune in for that. All right, Justin, you wrote the big article today. We'll get to TJ. TJ's busy looking through Lineup HQ, trying to find some elite value plays. Had himself a nice week last weekend when he gave us some of those. So we'll get to him in just a minute. But what's your overall thought of the slate, Justin? You wrote the article. I've got, at least for cash games, me and you are going to kind of go back and forth on those. A couple of guys, or actually 4 guys, I think on all sites you can play. Devontae Graham, Hamidou Diallo, Jeremy Sokan with everybody out in San Antonio, and then Evan Mobley, who what is this? One of the biggest spreads of the season, 16 or 17 points. Cleveland's favored by right now. I know you like all of those guys. What are we doing today? Maybe give the overview of the slate, because there's a lot of wonky stuff, especially in these first 2 games that can go on.
Yeah, and it's not really a stars and scrubs slate. Like, it's one of the first slates that we've only got. If you sort by fantasy point projection on Fanduel, we've only got 2 guys projected above 46 fantasy points. So it's, and with not a lot of news, it's just there's not a lot of big RG values. It's probably going to be a lower scoring slate, and probably one where in cash games you just try to avoid the landmines. And you're probably going with more of a balanced build. Like Giannis and Embiid are the 2 guys that project real well. They probably don't make it into a single cash game lineup for me. I like them in tournaments. But there's not enough 4K guys, I think, to where you can get there on FanDuel or DraftKings. I mean, maybe if you're playing on Yahoo, you can probably get there, but FanDuel and DraftKings, you're probably not landing on Giannis or Embiid in cash games tonight, and so you're naturally going with a more kind of balanced approach. And those are the guys you mentioned. Like Graham is probably the first guy in on FanDuel at 5,100. Langford's coming back, which gives me a little bit of pause, but they're just short on bodies and they're facing Houston, so it should be fine. I think Graham, Sohan, Mobley, and Edwards are the guys I've tagged. Really on both sites. I like Sohan a little better on DraftKings, but he's fine. I ended up tagging him on FanDuel too, just because of the matchup and how short San Antonio is. So basically that's one guy to cover pretty much every position. Like your Graham is your point guard. You've got Edwards with one of the wing positions. Sohan can go at either forward spot, and then you can play Mobley at center or at power forward as well. And those guys are all, you got 6,700 roughly is your average on FanDuel. If you play those four guys that I have tagged, you have 6,460 left for your other four spot or your other five spots. So it's definitely doable if you're not getting up to Giannis. Like if I throw Giannis in there as well, then you've got 5,100 remaining for your final four spots, which maybe is a little bit too thin. Like I guess it depends. If you feel like you want to get up to Giannis, I don't have any qualms about it. If you leave them out, I don't really have any qualms about that either in cash games. Interested to hear TJ's take on Giannis and Embiid in tournaments, but I think they're certainly interesting there. So for me, you're probably playing Graham, Sohan, Mobley, and Edwards, and then throw Diallo maybe as the fifth guy in. With them being 16-point underdogs, like I think Detroit is really interesting tonight, but I don't want to go overboard in cash games because they're only projected for 101 points. It's a really tough matchup for them. They're down like three bigs, so it's just they've got no big guys on. Like Stewart is out, Jalen Duren is out, Bogdanovich is out as well. So that guys like Wiseman are interesting. Bagley could be interesting. But Diallo is probably your safe play for cash games. And I don't want to go nuts on Detroit with that team total, but Diallo would be kind of the closest thing to a core tag. I've kind of gone all over the map in terms of positions here. But if I want to circle back in terms of additional options at each position, we can do that when we get over to DraftKings. But I think just in general, you're going to see most people playing those same 4 or 5 guys and then maybe mix and match in kind of your 2v2s around it.
Yeah, we are grateful to have Fanduel our sponsor. That's mainly what we're talking about right now. If you are a new sports bettor, if you have access to Fanduel in one of the sports betting states, you can sign up for the sports book and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Terms and conditions apply. Make sure to check that out. All right, we'll get into some other plays. I've got a couple cash game questions for you that we'll circle back to, Justin. But let's get to TJ from a tournament perspective. We'll start basically as a whole on the slate, right? What we've got, pricing's tight. Justin's mentioned that. It's really tough on FanDuel to get an Embiid or a Giannis into lineups unless you really go with maybe 2 guys who could legitimately score under 20 fantasy points tonight. All right, it's not looking very pretty over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, maybe one of them's attainable. Getting 2 in is almost impossible in my opinion tonight. So what's your overall thought on a slate from a roster construction? Maybe we can dig into the Detroit-Cleveland game, the Houston-San Antonio game. What type of shenanigans? You got any good plays there? If those games go awry, let's hear what you're looking at.
So the big thing to me, I think, I agree, especially on FanDuel with cards, that this is a much more balanced build-looking slate than a Stars and Scrubs. On DraftKings, I think it can get Stars and Scrubsy pretty easily, but on FanDuel, not so much, which has kind of been the case for most of this season. I do think most of the chalk we have today is good chalk up top, like Devontae Graham, Hamidou Diallo, Jeremy Sohan. I think all of those are good chalk pieces, and so I'm not running 150 today on FanDuel. I am on DraftKings, but if I were on FanDuel, I think I'd probably do the same thing where I just have Diallo and Graham and Sohan on just literally every lineup I build today. And if these guys are going to be 30, 40, 50% owned today. Well, I'm going to have them on 100. And that's going to be my way of differentiating today, as opposed to fading the chalky ones, doubling up my ownership on the chalky ones. My favorite stud as well is going to be Anthony Edwards, my favorite person to pair him with. And I think this will be the place that I'm most likely to get a little bit different in tournaments is De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox is one of my favorite spend up options today. And I love the idea of doing a little skinny stack with him and Anthony Edwards. That's kind of like my favorite thing to do for tournaments today. First game back from a left wrist injury, put up 50 fantasy points plus again. He's just been playing such good basketball lately. So the biggest thing I want to do on this slate is making sure I'm somewhat stacking. So if I want to get to Houston and San Antonio, I'm going to stack Houston and San Antonio. I'll play Jalen Green with Jeremy Sohan, Devontae Graham. Maybe I'll mix in Zach Collins or Şengün. And one of my favorite plays on the slate, but especially over on DraftKings, is Tari Eason. He's a little bit too expensive on Fanduel. I think I'd rather play somebody like Kenyon Martin Jr. or Jabari Smith at lower ownership on Fanduel. But stacking up this San Antonio Houston game, stacking up Minnesota and Sacramento. And if you want to play a ton of the Detroit value, if you're like, oh, all these guys are out, I really just want to play a ton of these Detroit guys, I think that's fine. But what you do with that is pair them with Mobley and Mitchell. Maybe not Mobley, because Mobley's going to be super chalky, but play Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, who nobody's getting to today. Mitchell and Garland are two, like, I don't really just like them straight up as a one-off in a lineup, but I really like the idea, if you're playing a lot of Detroit guys, running it back with Mitchell or Garland, because nobody's getting to those guys today. And if this game happens to stay close, which you're hoping for if you're playing a bunch of Detroit guys, that's going to be huge for you.
If that game, I want to switch it around. If that game doesn't stay close, right? It's got a 17-point spread. Detroit's tanking. Cleveland's great defense. Which of these guys is not going to come through? What's a guy that can maybe, from the low end off the bench? I know Rubio's a little interesting, but are you really trying to run out Ricky Rubio for extra minutes in this game? I don't know. Maybe not. How would this play out if it's up 22 points going into the fourth quarter here? What's that final rotation going to look like? Who gets the garbage minutes?
I don't honestly think I really care. Like, I'm not trying to take none of these guys are cheap enough that I'm not trying to take shots on Cedi Osman today on Cleveland. I'm not trying to take shots on, like, maybe Karis LeVert gets a little bit of extra run and you want to go there, but again, he's cheaper on DraftKings as well. Mm-hmm. It's like you mentioned, I don't think Rubio's going to go for extended run. Maybe he puts up a great fantasy point per minute game, but we're not exactly looking for Ricky Rubio to play 30 minutes today in a blowout. So Diallo's the one I'm most comfortable with, and that's why he's in 100% of my lineups. And I would probably rather take shots on some of the Detroit cheapies like a RJ Hampton as opposed to somebody on Cleveland.
All right. And then at the center from that game, you got Bagley or Wiseman. You got to pick a Detroit big there.
For tournaments, I would go Bagley. I think he's just got a much higher ceiling. Like, I would include Wiseman in my pool still, but 6K is a little pricey for him, and I think I'd rather go Bagley.
All right, and then I want to switch to a game with a 230 total from a tournament perspective, and you sort of went through, a lot of the plays you were looking at. Anyone off the radar? So if I sort by percentage owned, we're on FanDuel still, and you can sort of translate to DraftKings. Any of the lesser, Jabari Smith, Trey Jones, Kevin Porter, you want to put back, you were big on Bassey that one night. Do you still like Bassey tonight? If this game gets, I don't know, who knows what, if this game's close going into the fourth quarter, does either team want to win? The players are always going to try to play. How are the coaches going to try to do it? I just think it could get pretty wonky because you have the ability in this particular game to lose to a team you actively want to lose against. How do you see something strange playing out in this one? Oh, you're on mute, TJ.
Sorry about that. Dogs were barking. I don't mind Bassey in tournaments one bit. He's nice and low owned. He's 4.7K. I think that's somewhat reasonable for him. So I think he's still got a high upside for tournaments. I like the idea of getting to him today. In terms of like bang for your buck ownership, like I think the ones who are going the most underowned are that I'd want to get heaviest overweight on would be Jalen Green, maybe even Şengün coming in at sub 20%, Jabari Smith at less than 15%. That's be most likely where I'm going. And maybe even just take a shot on Trey Jones. Maybe his minutes get bumped up today.
All right. You mentioned Fox along with Anthony Edwards from a tournament perspective. We didn't really spend too much time on Philly, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Miami. Thoughts on Jimmy Butler? He's popping on our projections quite a bit today. High ownership. He was questionable. Looks like he's going to play. If your highest owned, with both builds on both sites, right? If your most expensive player is Anthony Edwards or Jimmy Butler, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am. I like Anthony Edwards a lot more than Jimmy Butler today, but if those are my more expensive guys, yeah, I'm cool with it.
And then if you were going up, do you prefer Embiid or Giannis from the tournament perspective?
I would go with Giannis if I'm only getting one of them.
All right. So I
just
think
because
that's
it could be Embiid or Harden, right? But for me,
Yep.
I feel like if I know it's Giannis on Milwaukee, and just the fact that he's cheaper than Embiid on Fanduel, I actually do really like Giannis on Fanduel. I haven't been as vocal about that as I should, because on DraftKings, where I'm playing most today, he's priced up. He's way more expensive than Embiid. I'm not getting to as much of him, but on Fanduel, where he's 11.6 and cheaper than Embiid, I actually like him quite a bit.
All right, Justin, I'm going to circle back to DraftKings and maybe from the cash game perspective. So it's basically the same. Do you like Mobley as much on DraftKings as on FanDuel? I think he's a little bit, what is he, more expensive on DraftKings, or is the same price?
Yeah, there's really not a ton of differences today. Like, he's still 7,600 on DK, so he's definitely fine there. And Graham and Sohan are a little bit cheaper, so you can basically roll the same core of guys, and it ends up working out, the same. And the one guy with the big price difference is Eason and Jalen Green. The Houston guys are a little bit more affordable on DK. But really, from a cash game perspective, your lineups will look fairly similar. But since Graham is a little cheaper, since Sohan's a little cheaper, if you play Eason, he's fairly cheap. You do have, as TJ mentioned, DraftKings can get a little more stars and scrubsy because it maybe is a little easier to get up to a Giannis on DK, which I'm fine with if you can get there. But in the overall landscape of, the rosterable players, there's just not a whole lot of difference today.
Yeah, I want to ask you from the cash game perspective, and I'm staring currently at two lineups on my screen. One I've gone with Embiid over Giannis. I just can't reach the 12.3 on DraftKings. It's a little bit too much, but I can get to Embiid, and I like the lineup that I'm looking at. Or I could play like a Jimmy Butler, Anthony Edwards combination, right? And those are my two highest guys. And maybe I'm not messing around with the I like all the value plays today. So if you have to, you can. Would you prefer the Butler Edwards build with maybe one extra 6K player or, 7K player? Or are you okay going up to Embiid with basically you're playing all the value plays that we've talked about on the show here, and you're able to get up to Embiid on DraftKings previously?
Yeah, I think I'm with the balance side, because I think you just get a higher floor. Again, I think tonight's about avoiding those landmines. So if you got Edwards, who hasn't been under like 30 fantasy points in a month, you got Butler, he's going to be fine, or Adebayo or somebody like that. If you're worried about Butler because he had that Q tag earlier, whatever the case may be, I just think that that's better than going with like Embiid plus Keegan Murray or something like that. Just the floor worries me too much on those like 4K plays today, to where I would lean towards the balanced approach in cash games.
One thing I want to mention quick, going back to FanDuel, that we sort of forgot to touch on, if you are looking to get a spend up in like Embiid or like Giannis, Blake Wesley for the Spurs at 3,800, I think is a very good value today, just because that's somebody that hasn't been priced up where most value plays have on FanDuel. And so he's somebody I'd be looking to get to as well a little bit if I'm trying to find a spend up.
All right. As far from the sports betting perspective today, Justin, I know you like to dabble in that, as do I, quite a bit. We got anything we're looking at tonight?
Not really. I mean, the slate is just so bad. I do kind of like the over in that Spurs game. Just if they're both tanking, maybe a little Ole defense at some points during that game. Like a lot of times we see those two types of teams, and their totals are up around 240, 235. So I do think I know some guys are out, but you got Porter back, you got Green back on the Houston side. So if I had to pick a side, a total tonight, I do like the over in that Houston game.
I think Bagley and Wiseman are both starting for Detroit tonight.
Did that just come out?
I saw it in a tweet from Josh Lloyd.
I would assume if Josh is tweeting it out, that's good.
I mean, they're supposed to it's probably to match up against Allen and Mobley, and I mean Detroit's so thin up front. Like those two guys could both play big minutes tonight. Like I think they're really strong tournament players.
Oh, this game's gonna get so ugly if those guys get in foul trouble.
I want to know FanDuel. But they've got a nice boost from what is it? Joel Embiid and Giannis to each score 30 points. Don't look at it, Justin. What do you think the normal odds on that should be? What do you think FanDuel's boosted it to?
Oh man, I'm bad at judging these things. So this is both of them together, right?
Yeah. Well, yes, they each score 30 points, and I think they're both over 30 points regularly on their line currently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd say maybe plus 220 as a normal line.
Oh, well, they said plus 135 as a normal line. It's boosted to 200. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Oh, that's not bad. Maybe I overshot their season averages. That's probably not a bad line. That was just a bad guess.
And if anyone was on, there's a nice, if you're into UFC, FanDuel's got a nice boost. John Jones to win by submission or points was plus 100. It's up to plus 200. That's a big one. I don't know. 10 years ago when I started on RotoGrinders, Justin, I might have been able to stay up till 1 a.m. to watch these. But there's pretty much no chance anymore. I could. Man,
especially during tax time. Like I'm lucky if I make it to like 10 some nights. Yeah. It's just I'm tired. So yeah, no 1 a.m.s for me. It's a no-go. I'm old as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
The other boost we have going tonight is all Brits talk about underwear Olympics. If we get up to 50 likes, Brit will finish the rest of the show in his underwear.
I'm already in my underwear. I started in my underwear. This is no difference. You can't.
That's actually much like the house in the background is a green screen. So are the clothes. Brit's actually just fully in the nude right now with some green screened clothes on him.
You could probably do that if you just wore like a green suit with today's technology. I bet you could probably do something like that.
See, look what's happened. I told you this was a horrible slate.
Devin, don't put the like scroll on the bottom of the screen there. I see what you're doing.
I was just sitting here thinking I need to get a full green suit. Just come into the show one day with just my face showing up.
Yeah, but there's a couple of bets I'm looking. The only other one I'm on today is Rudy Gobert. His specific history against Sabonis is about the best game log from a rebound perspective and a double-double perspective that you will actually come across. So if you like player versus player matchups, I'll be a sucker for those once in a while. You can hit the Rudy Gobert rebound line on FanDuel, and I took the up to 14 plus rebounds as well. There's a pretty strong history.
Can we please get Naz Reid to a team where he can play heavy minutes?
I'm more interested. Is the Rudy Gobert trade like the worst trade in NBA history?
Yeah, it's not great.
Up there for sure. I don't know if anything can top Pierce and Garnett to the Nets way back in the day. Like I think that was one of the biggest hauls, but this one's pretty ridiculous as well. Detroit is starting Ivy, Hayes, Livers, Bagley, and Wiseman. All three of their big men are starting at once.
They're going to lose by
any
30.
Other big men.
Cavs minus 16. Add that to the bets list.
All right, I'll go throw that in there. Right? Why not?
I would never lay 16 points.
It's 25 in the fourth quarter, and you lose that one.
I like that call by Bryant in chat. The Mavs could use a Naz Reid. I think Naz Reid would be great on the Mavericks.
Yeah,
he'd be great on a lot of teams.
Yes, just stuck
wasting away behind somebody else.
All right, we're going to get to some questions here. Hopefully, we've covered most of the slate. We've got about 15 minutes, which on this slate should be ample time to cover everything. I'm going to go to our Discord for premium members first in the crunch time section. Let me get to that. I got to switch out of the prop shop. If you're ever looking for props or anything like that, make sure to join Chiefs Prop Shop. Always a great little community in there. But since this is crunch time, let's talk a couple of these. There are some questions loaded in here. Carolina guy wanted to know FanDuel single entry favorite low owned studs. So when I pull up ownership, what would we look at from the high priced players? It's looking like Embiid 15%, Giannis 26, Mitchell 6, Harden around 20, Trae Young, who we didn't even talk about, at 10%, Sabonis, Fox, Edwards is up there. What's your favorite of all these from an ownership tournament upside perspective?
For the ownership, it's definitely De'Aaron Fox for me. Under 20%, too cheap, just not enough. However, Domantas Sabonis on FanDuel, where he's 9,500 and has that power forward eligibility in addition to the center eligibility, I love him for tournaments as well. I think it's not even crazy to try and get like a mini stack where you play Edwards, Fox, and Sabonis. I think all three of them could hit tonight. You mix in some value from the other games, and those are your studs. I think that's very interesting. And then if you happen to be loading up on Detroit players today, I do think it's somewhat interesting to run it back with a Donovan Mitchell or a Darius Garland. But to me, it's really all about these mini stacks, like playing Fox with Edwards, playing Mitchell with all of your Detroit guys, playing DeJounte Murray or Trae Young with Jimmy Butler. Like that's kind of how I want to build my tournament lineups today, with these mini stacks with the studs.
Let's see. NBA DFS wants to know, this is a cash game. He's looking at Fox and Kyle Anderson or Mike Conley and Sabonis. Those are the combinations. The guard is where all like, there's not a lot of like good value, but it's where all the, value might be today. So I wasn't really on Fox. I like the Fox call from the tournament perspective quite a bit from TJ today. I'm not really on any of these guys on my cash games on FanDuel cards.
Yeah, it wouldn't be my first combo, but there is zero chance I'm playing Mike Conley in a cash game on the second game of a back-to-back. He played 30 minutes last night. There's just way too much risk with Conley in cash games tonight. So I don't even remember. I did at first. I remembered all four, but now I just
Fox and Anderson, or you can swap out Kyle Anderson for Bagley. Do you have a
Yeah, I mean, in tournaments I'd be fine with Bagley, but yeah, Fox and Anderson I'm fine with. Definitely no Conley in cash games tonight.
All right, Gregorius, pull out the PGA hat. Who are we playing in round 4 showdown?
I haven't looked yet, so weird, kind of a weird tournament. Of course, it's not played quite as difficult as we expected with the weather, but have not looked at the final round yet, so I can't offer a good opinion until I sit down and do that probably in an hour or so.
All right. We've got a question from Sugar Ray. He wants to know Sohan or Murray on a DraftKings tournament. Which Murray is that going to be? Is that going to be, you've got Keegan Murray?
It's got to be Keegan, yeah.
And yeah, I would say Keegan Murray. So from an ownership perspective, Sohan's beating him about 33-20 on our latest projections here. Does that
Murray's at 20%?
Yeah.
No way. No,
I have Jeremy Sohan in 100% of lineups, and I have Keegan Murray in 3.
Yeah, he was at 20. I could refresh, but this is what it comes to tonight.
I'm not disagreeing with the percentage. I'm just saying there's no way I'm playing him in a GPP at 20%.
All right, so you'd probably go overweight on Sohan in that particular.
Like for what it's worth on DraftKings today, it's like for those who tuned in late, I'll hammer it home again. I had Graham, Diallo, Eason, and Jeremy Sohan in 150 of 150.
People are questioning Detroit value with this new starting lineup out here. So from a cash game perspective, cards, are we rushing to try to get in maybe a Marvin Bagley over Evan Mobley now that they're both starting in the lineup? Is anyone else
No,
jumped up?
I mean, I think they get a bump, but like, I still don't think you want to go crazy in cash games with a team that's might not score 100 points. Like, it's a tough opponent, a good defense. There's foul trouble risk. Like, I'm fine if you want to play one of them, if you want to play one of the bigs, because they are going to get more minutes tonight. Like, Diallo is still the safest, probably from a cash game perspective. I think TJ, remind me of that lineup. What was it again? Was it Ivy, Diallo, Livers?
No,
Diallo's coming off the bench, but it's
Okay.
Ivy, Hayes, Livers, Bagley, and Wiseman. I do think it's so important to like look at this slate as a whole, though, and realize Detroit has a 10-point lower total than any other team on the entire slate. These guys suck.
Yeah, so people might start to worry about Diallo. Like, it doesn't necessarily worry me with him coming off the bench. Like, he's going to have a lot of usage with that second unit. I mean, I still think he's fine. And then maybe you play one of the bigs. But I don't know. I would just be careful about blowing up your lineup to get these Detroit guys in there. Like, they could get absolutely waxed.
Yeah, I will. If you, I'm staring. I have Wiseman on my DraftKings cash team right now, and he's a couple $100 cheaper than Bagley. That's about what I'm looking at, along with Diallo. But that's to get a guy like Embiid, right? So if you didn't want to play one of the Detroit guys, you would I would axe out Embiid and maybe go up to the next tier of, center/utility players to do something like that, with maybe a Butler Edwards combo instead of Embiid and Wiseman is basically the choices I've personally made tonight. Let's see here. Steve-O wanted to know, LeVert, if you're playing the blowout angle for the Cavs, is he going to get extra minutes tonight? Cards? That would probably make sense, right?
I mean, he would, but yeah, I'm kind of with TJ earlier. He said he didn't really care who's going to get the blowout run. LeVert is only 3,900 on DK. Like, I think he's playable there if you're going the stars and scrubs route.
Raymond wants to know, I'll throw this to you, TJ, Sabonis or Butler as his last piece?
I'd go Sabonis.
And then Sugar Ray want to know, Keegan Murray or Tari Eason is what he meant to say. So how do we break
Tari
those
Eason.
Yeah, I'm on
100
Eason
times
as well.
Tari Eason.
Cards?
Yep, same.
All right.
I don't share TJ's crazy enthusiasm, but I agree.
Arlo wanted to know, DraftKings cash, Tyrese Maxey, and I think that's fine, right? If you wanted, would you rather play Maxey? Like, I would play, if I had extra money, I would play Maxey for, what is he, 5,400 on DraftKings?
He's affordable on DK. I think he's fine.
He's certainly, if he's on your cash team tonight, I have absolutely no problem with it, especially if it gets you off of something you're not super interested in. I think that's fine on DraftKings. He was basically the last guy out of my team. I just can't find the extra, what do I need, $500 or $600 to get him into my lineup right now. So I think that's fine, Arlo. That's going to do it for Crunch Time channel on Discord. Let's go to the youtubes.com. Thankfully, we have not reached all those likes, so I get to stay currently as is in my underwear. There will be no change of clothing because
I've been answering questions in the YouTube. Now we're going to be going answering the questions out loud just in case anybody has similar ones. Let's get the likes for us, everybody. Like, let's take this. Take your little mouse, slide it over, click that like button. If you're watching on your phone, hit hide chat, then hit the like, bring the chat back down. It does so much for us, fights the YouTube algorithm. It's the only way we show up on the feed. It's how we get paid. I'm going to get fired if we don't get the likes. It's the only reason I'm here. So come on, let's bump them up.
TJ, I want to jump in, and we never got to the Chris Dunn play of tonight. There's a couple minutes left. We're searching around. I don't think there's the Chris Dunn of last week when you had a really great call on him.
There's nobody like that I think is going to be like a sub 5%er that's going to be going off like that. If I had to pick one, like the closest to it in low ownership, it would probably be somebody like Charles Bassey. Mm-hmm. But I'm not taking the same type of stands like I was on that slate. Like, there's nobody who's going to be 5% owned that I'm trying to get 40% of today. Even somebody like Bassey, who's going cheap, low owned, and I really like, I'm still only getting about 10-15% of them. The way, like the stand I'm taking today, is 100% of those 4 players: Graham, Diallo, Sohan, Eason. All 4 of them are going to be on all of my teams, and then I'm getting 40%-ish of Anthony Edwards and De'Aaron Fox. And then after that, I'm spreading things out from there. So my big stands are going to be Fox and Edwards, and then the 4 lock buttons. I don't really have any 5%ers that I'm trying to get crazy overweight on. There are guys like a Bassi and like Rudy Gobert is somebody who's going to be super low owned. I'll try and get a little overweight on, but nobody that I'm going to be getting crazy with.
All right. I see you answered this in YouTube chat, but for the people not paying attention to the chat, maybe we could go over this one again because it is an interesting one. If you are only trying to play one of the value plays that everyone's playing today, and this one was basically Graham or Diallo, if you had to pick just one from a tournament perspective, maybe you're playing one lineup or you wanted to just try to be a little bit different from the field that's going to have those 2 guys combined are going to be in like what 35-40% of tournament lineups tonight, maybe something like that. If you had to pick just one, which one is it, TJ?
It's probably Devontae Graham for me.
All right. Justin, do you have a preference between those
Yeah,
two?
I would agree.
All right, so we'd go with Devontae Graham on that one. Let's see here. Bobby Portis. Anyone on Bobby Portis tonight? Not someone I really gave more than a glance at.
It's definitely not a cash game play.
Yep.
No,
TJ.
one of the first people I X'd out of my pool today.
All right. Let's see YouTube. I'm just scrolling back up here. Biggest bust risk on Fanduel from any of the reasonably owned players tonight, TJ?
I'm gonna go with maybe like in terms of a spend up, I'm gonna go with James Harden. And then Jimmy Butler at his almost 40% on FanDuel. Those would be kind of my expensive ones I think are most likely to bust. And then just the cheap, super high owned guys most likely to bust. I would go with, I'd say probably a 40% owned Evan Mobley as well as somebody I'd be looking to get underweight on just for the blowout risk.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. And I know Cards has him tagged, and I'm not going to go against that.
I think he's great.
No, I mean,
but like
in GPPs, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think because he's 40% owned, you basically have no choice but to play him in cash.
Yeah, but I agree from the tournament perspective, right? If Mitchell goes nuts or Garland goes nuts or Jared Allen doesn't really go nuts or, but, there's a lot of ways that any singular Cavs player could fail because they're just not all these guys are going to get there if the game turns into a blowout. So Mobley from the tournament is an interesting tournament fade, and I would agree with that. Let's see here. Bassi or Nas on a DraftKings tournament? I see you're answering these. Who would you play, TJ?
I'd go. I think I'd still go Bassi. If you can afford Nas, it'd be tempting, but I think I'd still rather Bassi.
Bassi or LeVert? I think from that utility spot, you got a choice there.
Jeez, that's difficult. They're all just high risk, high reward. I'd take it back. I think I'd go Nas over Bassi, but I think I'd go Bassi over LeVert.
All right. Just scrolling through. I think that's most of the YouTube. We only got about a minute till lock here. Boxers are not minus 1,000. There's no boxer briefs. Is that what they're called? I don't even know what I'm called. What we're wearing. I saw Dean. That was Dean's one comment in the chat was what underwear I was wearing. It seems about right, guys. Dean to make that comment minus 10,000. What's up, Dean? How's it going? I haven't seen you in a couple of weeks since Nashville. So, anyone have any final thoughts here?
No, you expertly navigated this, 40 minutes on the slate like this. It was timed perfectly. Well done.
Very well done.
That's why I get the big bucks to talk about underwear and the combine and anything else I could come up with because I knew we would need a couple extra minutes in here. Let's see. Dean likes Sengun. We didn't even really talk about Sengun. That game starts at 8:00. What's everyone's take on him? I think he was really popping in projections earlier in the day, and I think he was overtook maybe by some of the Detroit value, a little bit by Collins once everyone.
Well,
else
he's too good for that game, so he might get benched in the tankathon.
Yeah, I was sort of worried about that too, so I eliminated out of players from my cash pool. TJ, what do you think of Sengun from the tournament perspective? You know, we know he has the big game upside. It's against San Antonio where people have big games, but it hasn't really been happening for him in recent games.
Yeah, I still like him in the for tournaments today.
All right, let's see here. I guess that's about it. Thanks again to our sponsor, Fanduel. If you are in a sports betting state and you don't have a Fanduel Sportsbook account, pretty sure you all do. If you are in a sportsbook state, it's the first one you're probably going to download. But if you're not, you can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. Check the terms and conditions on that. And other than that, I think we're going to get out of here. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Click the like button on the way out. We got the 51, but TJ forgot to tell you it was by 7:30 Eastern. We had to click the over 50. So unfortunately, TJ, I'm not allowed to stand up currently for anyone. What do we have? One female viewer. Well, over under 15%. What do we think? How many are out there?
15% is probably too high, but I'll take the over on one.
Have you ever seen like when the fantasy, is it the FSGA that combines all the statistics of the female fantasy sports players? It always seems like it's like 60-40. And do you think, is that just like they watch sports, or it seems like that's a little high from like our perspective, right?
I don't know.
It does.
There's
I mean,
usually quite a few in chat, and I mean, I say this all the time that I think Squirrel is probably the best DFS player in the entire world, but maybe the second best one at RG, at least definitely when it comes to getting a live final seats, has got to be Christie.
Oh yes, Christie is a no doubt absolute beast when it comes to the GPP game, and I agree. Squirrel is an amazing tournament player, so I always love doing shows with them. But I like doing shows that you get. I like doing shows, guys. Like I said, that's just what it boils down to. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks everybody for watching. For Justin and TJ, I'm Britt, and we out ya.